Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Debate, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a very disturbing thing that's come out of Britain, and this is something that I saw on in fact, the Romanian guy's got a channel, and I saw he did a coverage of an interview with John Anderson, where it was pointed out last year in Britain, some 3,300 or thereabouts people were arrested for making social media posts that were viewed as hate speech or something like that. Not where there was no crime committed, but there was a breach of thought crime, where intent and so on can be arbitrarily presumed by the state. Now, let's look at say the population in Britain was 70 million. Then let's look at the population of Russia, which I think is 145 million. And yet in Russia, there was only 300 or so, I think 400 maybe, of people that were arrested for social media thought crimes in Russia. Now, Russia is far more autocratic, or in theory at least, is far more autocratic than Britain. And yet they have 1/8, 1/9 the arrests for social media thought crimes than Britain does. Now, however you want to look at it, that's incredible, because it is in proportion. If you look at it in terms of relative population, then you've got 18 times more likely to be arrested for a social media thought crime in Britain than you are in Russia. Now that seems impossible. It seems inconceivable on the face of it. Britain, that cradle of freedom, those citizens' rights, the rights before the law, the law that is not arbitrary, independent courts, the rule of law, due legal process, and yet, people are 18 times on population relative, 18 times more likely to be arrested for a thought crime, a social media thought crime in England than they are in Russia. There's a few people have sort of said, hey, hold on a minute, the Russians, there's far fewer Russians have social media, and they're far more circumspect in what they say. But that doesn't doesn't sort of count for the whole story. We need to understand that in Russia, not using someone's transgender pronoun, that isn't a crime. Using colourful language to refer to people in the the LGBT community and so on, that's not a crime. To make what would be regarded as misogynist comments in the West, that's not a crime. So there's a whole lot of things that are crimes now in the West, or in Britain in this case, that are not crimes in Russia. So given they've got far fewer crimes, so they've therefore a much lesser opportunity to transgress on these thought crime issues. Now, if you go and criticise President Putin or something like that, and make wild claims, and I imagine that wouldn't go too well. But the things that people are getting arrested for in Britain do not exist as crimes in Russia. So that would account for obviously a big difference in you have to directly threaten or attack the government in Russia to get that type of thought crime arrest made. Whereas in Britain, if you attack the central pillars of the globalization project and how the globalists are going about undermining and subverting and dislocating the Western society, if you complain against that, you can be arrested. So, the globalists, we need LGBT and trans because it undermines, dislocates the fabric of Western society. So we need that. We must do it to crush the Western society so we can implement the globalist project. So if you talk against it or somehow push back against that movement to undermine Western society, then we will arrest you. So it's that scenario. But it seems inconceivable to me. Now, Now, if you look at say, you look at the great secret police regimes, and I'll stick with white countries for the moment. But if you look at the big secret police regimes of the last 100 years or so, so we're looking at like the Soviet secret police. There was a Tsarist secret police beforehand, by the way, but you look at the Soviet secret police and their arbitrary ruthlessness, and the East European, when the Soviet communists took over East Europe, you look at the situation there in terms of the secret police, because none of those regimes were legitimate. None of them had the support of the people. So the governments at the time were, as they saw it, had no option other than to be tyrannical and to arbitrarily arrest people and just terrorise the populace into silence and acquiescence. But one of the most supposedly formidable secret police operations was very efficient and so on, was the Stasi secret police in East Germany. Bear in mind, at the end of World War II, Germany was divided into 4 zones: the British, French, American, and Russian zone. And the Russian zone then declared themselves to be a separate nation-state republic. And so, as part of the Cold War front line between capitalism and communism, sort of East Germany was in the absolute front line. And Berlin, by the way, was also divided amongst the 4 powers. So you had British, Americans, and French right in the middle of this communist zone, and that created, as you can imagine, a lot of tension. Similarly, it was also the front line for espionage and spies and all sorts of goings on. So anyway, the Stasi were arresting on an average, about 6,000 to 6,500 people a year for political crimes. Now, these aren't the same crimes as killing somebody or robbing the corner store or spitting on the sidewalk or something like that. These were actual political crimes. So you believe it was alleged, and they had a very low bar of evidence, by the way. It was alleged that you're up to all sorts of things. They had a surveillance state where they could put all sorts of microphones in your apartment or your house, so they could monitor you 24/7. And they employed something like 3% of the population was employed either as secret police. This is not the normal police, but the secret police, and also undercover agents and informers. So this seems quite astonishing that they had that many people. Even the paranoid Soviets, it didn't have that many people relative to population size. And if you look at the tyrannical regimes of the last 100 years, the Nazis actually had the fewest secret police and had the fewest informers and had the smallest list of political crimes that you could commit. So, provided you weren't, a Jewish gypsy lesbian or something like that, you could. It was unlikely you would ever get arrested for political crimes. Not that some didn't, but if you look at the amount of secret police in Germany, and then this is like in the 1930s in Germany, and the amount of informers and so on that they had, it was out of all the tyrannical regimes, now including sort of Pol Pot's Cambodia and Chairman Mao's China, North Korea, and so on, it had the smallest secret police and informant apparatus out of all of them. Now, I wonder why that is. But anyway, so let's just coming back to the thing, Britain, that bastion of freedom and rights and the rule of law is now, per head of population, one of the most ruthless in arbitrarily arresting people for social media thought crimes. Again, misgendering a trans person and so on. I'm saying this and finding it hard to believe and going, well, no, it must be a bad dream. Surely this couldn't be happening in reality. England, this is happening in England? No, it can't be. No, I've misunderstood. But it is, and their ratio of arrests for purely political crimes is, as I understand it at the moment, one of the highest in the world, outside of China and North Korea, one of the highest in the world. Now, in England, I just want to sort of mention, because that's how bad things have got. And I'd like you to show me a voice anywhere in the Western world or in England, prominent voice, a political voice that's actually getting up and saying, this has to stop and has to stop right now. And, you know, we move every day, we move further and further away from the rule of law, the way the British police protect the climate change activists that are disrupting all sorts of things. But if anyone tries to move them out the way, the police are right on there to arrest that guy. Arrest a fucking Nazi. He must be a Nazi because he's trying to stop the climate change protesters. So he's got to be a Nazi. And so the police have now become a protection racket for the globalist, social undermining project, which is certainly going full tilt in Britain. And you know what we have to do is we've got to stand up for the rule of law to be impartially applied, due legal process, and independent courts. And if we achieve that, all of us are protected. And when I say that, what I mean is if the gayest, trans, blackest, lesbian in the whole universe comes into court, then their legal rights are exactly the same as anyone else. And that is what's called the rule of law. Now, it doesn't matter whether they're a victim or not a victim or this or that or the next thing. Their legal rights must be absolutely intact when they walk in that, or when they interact with the police and when they walk into that courtroom door. And similarly, the burden of proof they need to meet, whether it's in the accusation or in defence, is exactly the same as the other party, and a completely and fully independent court with not even a whisper of ideology about it. It's the facts and the law. And that's how we protect people's legal rights. That's how we protect them as citizens. We don't protect them through bullshit quotas and ideologies. That's crap, utter crap. We protect their legal. So when anyone comes, if someone assaults the gay, black, trans, lesbian, whatever, someone assaults them, then there are many laws can be brought in. Not bullshit ideological hate crime, but you've assaulted somebody, that is breaking the fucking law. And you have to therefore be accountable to the law, to the impartial, independent, not the arbitrary ideological law, but the impartial, independent law. And if you're found to have, assaulted this gay, black, trans, lesbian, whatever, then the penalty is prescribed under law, apply. So this is how you protect people's rights. There is no other way of protecting people's rights, because you protect them from the laws being broken, but similarly you protect them from the tyranny of the state. And that's why the rule of law and due legal process, the rules of evidence, independent courts are so vitally important. And we're losing it. As every day goes by, we lose this, and we'll end up with legal rights for nobody. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.